The royal vessel Eternal Grace drifted through the cold darkness of space like a wounded animal waiting to die. Queen Velithanara of the Sindari Collective stood on her damaged bridge and watched the warning lights flash red across every console. Her elegant blue skin had turned pale with fear, and her 4 slender arms gripped the command railing so tight that her knuckles had gone white. Around her, the surviving members of her crew worked in desperate silence, trying to keep the ship alive for just a few more hours. "How many did we lose?" she asked her advisor. Commander Yethrol checked his console with trembling fingers. 3 escort ships, my queen. 412 crew members. The Korath ambush was perfectly executed. The queen closed her large silver eyes and felt the weight of those deaths pressing down on her heart. The Korath were slavers, brutal reptilian predators, who captured sentient beings and sold them across the galaxy's black markets. Her convoy had been traveling through what should have been safe territory when the attack came without warning. Now, the Eternal Grace floated helplessly near the border of human-controlled space. The engines were destroyed, the weapons were offline, and 3 Korath hunter ships circled them like sharks smelling blood in the water. "They want me alive," the queen whispered. "A Sindari queen would fetch a fortune on the slave markets." Yethrol nodded grimly. "They have sent a message demanding your surrender. They promised to spare the crew if you comply. And you believe them?" "No, my queen. The Korath never spare anyone. They will take all of us." Velithanara turned to look at the main view screen. Beyond the damaged hull of her ship, she could see the distant stars of human territory. For 50 years, the Sindari Collective had refused all alliance offers from the Terran Union. Her own father had called humans dangerous primitives and deathworlders who could never be trusted. But what choice did she have now? "Send a distress signal to the nearest human outpost," she commanded. Every officer on the bridge turned to stare at her with shocked expressions. "My queen," Yethrol said carefully, "the humans are unpredictable creatures from a death world. Their planet is filled with poison, predators, and constant violence. Are you certain?" "I am certain that we will all die or become slaves if we do nothing." The queen interrupted. "Send the message." Yethrol bowed his head and transmitted the signal. The message was simple and direct. "We require assistance. Our queen will die." The response came faster than anyone expected. On a human station called Frontier 7, Captain Park J1 was finishing his evening meal when the alert reached his console. He read the Sindari distress call 3 times before he believed it. The proud Sindari were actually asking humans for help? This was unprecedented in galactic history. J1 immediately contacted Earth Command through a secure quantum channel. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin appeared on his screen within seconds. "Captain Park, we have received the same signal," the Admiral said. "This situation requires a very specific response." "What are your orders, Admiral?" "The Sindari Queen is politically valuable. Her rescue could open doors that have been closed to us for decades. But the Korath are dangerous opponents. 3 hunter ships means approximately 200 warriors." J1 nodded seriously. "Should I mobilize the station defense force?" "No, Captain. A large military response would take too long and might escalate the situation. We need something smaller, faster, and far more terrifying." The Admiral's eyes grew cold. "Contact the Silent Judgment. Tell Sergeant Choi that the Reapers have a new mission." J1 felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about the Reapers' special forces, operatives who specialized in impossible missions and psychological warfare. Even among humans, they were considered frightening. "Understood, Admiral. I will make contact immediately." Back on the Eternal Grace, the Sindari crew waited in tense silence for any response to their desperate plea. When the communication console finally beeped with an incoming message, every eye turned toward it. "We have received a reply from the humans," the communications officer announced with a shaking voice. "Help is coming. They are sending a team called—" He paused and checked the translation twice. "They are sending something called Reapers." Queen Velithanara frowned at the unfamiliar word. "What is a Reaper?" Commander Jethro was already searching through the Galactic Intelligence database. As he read the information on his screen, his pale blue face became even paler. His hands began to shake, and he had to grip the console to steady himself. "Commander?" the Queen asked with growing concern. "What did you find?" Rahl turned to face her with wide, terrified eyes. "Reapers are human special forces soldiers, my Queen. According to Galactic Intelligence reports, they are classified as psychological warfare specialists and extreme threat elimination units." He swallowed hard before continuing. "One report describes them as the warriors that even humans fear." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The Queen looked at her crew officers and workers who had served her family for generations. They were scholars, diplomats, and administrators. They were not warriors. And now warriors were coming to save them, warriors from a death world. Warriors so terrifying that their own violent species feared them. "How many are they sending?" she asked quietly. Rahl checked the message again. "6, my Queen. They are sending 6 soldiers." "6?" one of the officers gasped. "Against 200 Korath. That is suicide." But Queen Velithanara said nothing. She simply stared at the stars of human space and wondered what kind of beings could face such odds and still answer the call. What kind of creatures had humanity forged in the fires of their death world? She would find out soon enough. Outside the wounded ship, the 3 Korath hunter vessels continued their patient circle, waiting for their prey to surrender. They had no idea that death was already racing toward them through the darkness of space. The Reapers were coming. The ship appeared from nowhere. One moment, the space beside the Eternal Grace was empty. The next moment, a small black vessel materialized as if stepping out of the shadows themselves. There was no warning, no engine signature, no sensor detection, just sudden existence where nothing had been before. "By the ancient stars," Commander Jethro whispered. "Where did that come from?" The Zendari sensors scrambled to identify the mystery ship, but the readings made no sense. The vessel seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its hull was covered in some kind of material that made it almost invisible, even when you were looking directly at it. Queen Velithanara studied the ship with a mixture of fear and fascination. It was small, barely large enough for a dozen passengers, and it carried no visible weapons. Yet something about its silent presence made her scales prickle with unease. "That must be the human vessel," she said. "Open a communication channel." Before her crew could respond, the airlock warning light activated. Someone was already coming aboard. The Queen and her guards hurried to the main airlock, where a small crowd of curious and terrified crew members had gathered. The inner door hissed open, and 6 figures stepped onto the Zendari ship. They were humans, but unlike any humans the Zendari had ever seen in diplomatic recordings. Each one wore armor that seemed to drink the light around it. The black material covered them from head to toe, leaving no skin exposed. Their helmets had no visible eye openings, yet somehow Velithanara knew they could see everything. They moved in perfect silence, their footsteps making no sound on the metal floor. The leader of the group stepped forward and removed her helmet. She was a human female with short black hair and eyes the color of dark ice. Her face showed no emotion, not anger, not fear, not even curiosity. She simply observed the aliens around her with the calm patience of a predator who had all the time in the world. "I am Sergeant First Class Choi Min-seo," she announced in a voice as cold and flat as her eyes. "We are here in response to your distress signal. Queen Velithanara had expected many things from human warriors. She had expected loud voices and aggressive postures. She had expected crude weapons and brutal manners. She had expected the savagery that supposedly defined Deathworld species. Instead, she found discipline. She found control. She found 6 soldiers who radiated danger without making a single threatening gesture. "I am Queen Velithanara of the Sundari Collective," she replied, keeping her voice steady through sheer willpower. "I thank you for answering our call." Mincio nodded once. "What is your situation?" Commander Yethrol stepped forward with a portable display showing the tactical situation. 3 Karth hunter ships have us surrounded. Our engines and weapons are destroyed. We estimate approximately 200 Korath warriors aboard those vessels. The human sergeant studied the display for exactly 5 seconds. "Acceptable," she said. "Acceptable?" Yethrol repeated in disbelief. "There are 6 of you and 200 of them. How is that acceptable?" One of the other reapers, a tall male with broad shoulders, let out a small sound that might have been a laugh. Mincio silenced him with a glance. "We have faced worse odds," she stated simply. "What is the enemy's current behavior?" "They are waiting for our surrender. They want the queen alive for the slave markets." Mincio's eyes flickered with something that might have been anger, but it vanished too quickly to be certain. "That will not happen." She turned to her squad and began issuing orders in rapid Korean. The other 5 Reapers nodded and immediately started unpacking equipment from their armor. Compartments, strange devices that the Sundari had never seen before. Queen Velithanara watched in confusion. "What are you doing? Are you preparing a defense?" "No," Mincio replied without looking up. "We are preparing an assault." "An assault?" The Queen's voice rose with shock. "You mean to attack them?" "Correct. We will board all 3 enemy vessels simultaneously and eliminate the threat." The Sundari crew exchanged horrified glances. Commander Yethrol grabbed his queen's arm as if to protect her from the insanity he was witnessing. "That is impossible," he declared. "Even if you could reach those ships, you would be slaughtered. The Korath are apex predators from a world even more dangerous than Earth. They have armored scales, infrared vision, and claws that can tear through metal." Mincio finally looked at him. Her dark eyes held no fear, no doubt, no hesitation. "I know what they are. I have killed Korath before." She held up one of the strange devices, a small cylinder that looked almost like a coffin built for a single person. "These are micro-jump pods. They will launch us directly into the enemy ships by piercing their hulls. We will split into 3 teams of 2. Each team will take 1 ship. 2 soldiers against 60 or 70 Korath." Yethrol asked weakly. "Yes." The Queen stepped forward, her fear temporarily overcome by curiosity. "How can you possibly expect to survive such an attack?" Mincio met her eyes. "The Korath expect to face a cornered prey that will fight defensively. They do not expect to become the prey themselves. They have never faced Reapers. They do not know what we are capable of." She paused and something changed in her expression, something dark and dangerous. "We do not fight like normal soldiers, Your Majesty. We fight like nightmares. By the time the Korath understand what is happening, most of them will already be dead." The Queen stared at this small human female who spoke of killing hundreds of alien predators as if discussing a routine task. She thought about all the things she had been taught about humans, that they were violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. Now she realized those descriptions had been understatements. "Is there anything we can do to help?" she asked. Mincio nodded. "Stay here and stay alive. Monitor their communications, if possible. And when this is over, remember what you see." She turned back to her squad. "Reapers, prepare for insertion. We deploy in 15 minutes." As the 6 humans readied themselves for what seemed like certain death, Queen Valithanara whispered a prayer to the ancient stars. She prayed for the success of these terrifying warriors. She prayed for the safety of her crew. And somewhere in her heart, she prayed that humanity would never become her enemy. The micro-jump pod screamed through space like bullets fired from a god's weapon. Inside her coffin-sized capsule, Sergeant Mincio counted the seconds until impact. Beside her, in his own pod, Corporal Beak Taeyan breathed slowly and steadily, preparing his mind for the violence to come. They had done this 100 times before. They would do it 100 times again. The pod struck the Korath command ship with a sound like thunder, piercing the armored hull and sealing themselves into the breach. Emergency alarms immediately began screaming throughout the enemy vessel. Mincio kicked open her pod and rolled into the corridor with her weapon already raised. The hallway was dark. The Korath preferred dim lighting that matched their underground homeworld. But the darkness was no obstacle for a Reaper. Her helmet's sensors painted the environment in perfect detail. "I am in," she reported through her squad channel. "Beginning operation." 2 other confirmations came immediately. The pods carrying Kim So-yeon and Yun Ji-hoon had successfully breached the second hunter ship. Lee Dong-wook and Sergeant Kang Ha-jun had landed in the third vessel. All 6 Reapers were now inside enemy territory. Taehan emerged from his pod and joined Mincio in the corridor. Without speaking, they began to move. The first Korath warrior appeared 30 seconds later, a massive reptilian creature covered in black scales and armed with a plasma rifle. He stood over 8 feet tall and weighed at least 400 pounds. His infrared eyes scanned the darkness for intruders. He never saw Mincio. She moved like smoke through shadows, appearing behind him without a sound. Her blade found the gap between his neck scales, and he died before his brain could register the pain. She caught his body and lowered it silently to the floor. "One down," she whispered, moving to secondary corridor. On the bridge of the command ship, War Chief Krathvolum received the hull breach alarm with more annoyance than concern. Intruders? On his ship? The Sundari must be more desperate than he thought. "Send a hunting pack to investigate," he ordered. "Kill the intruders and bring me their bodies. I want to see what kind of fools think they can challenge the Korath." 10 warriors departed for the breach location. None of them returned. Krathvol's annoyance began to transform into something unfamiliar uncertainty. He activated the internal communication system. "Hunting Pack 7, report your status." No response. "Hunting Pack 7, respond immediately." Still nothing. Then the lights went out. Across the ship, every illumination system failed simultaneously. The Korath could see in complete darkness using their infrared vision, but the sudden blackout still created confusion and fear. Warriors who had been patrolling confidently now found themselves jumping at every sound. And there were so many sounds. A scream echoed from the engineering section, cut short by wet silence. Another scream came from the cargo bay. Then another from the weapons storage. The screams spread through the ship like a plague, each one ending abruptly before help could arrive. Krathvolum grabbed his communication console. "All warriors to battle stations. We are under attack. Find the intruders and destroy them." But his warriors were finding only death. Mincio moved through the command ship like a ghost made of blades and fury. She did not fight, she hunted. Each Korath she encountered died before they could raise their weapons. She used the darkness and their own fear against them, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing before anyone could respond. Taeyan operated nearby, equally deadly and equally invisible. Between them, they had eliminated 40 warriors in less than 15 minutes. Then Mincio activated her psychological warfare protocol. She connected to the ship's internal communication system and began broadcasting. Every speaker on the vessel suddenly came alive with the sounds of Korath death screams recordings she had captured during the assault. The terrible chorus of dying warriors filled every corridor, every room, every hiding place. The remaining Korath panicked. These were apex predators, the most feared hunters in their sector of space. They had never been prey before. They did not know how to handle the terror that now gripped their hearts. Some warriors began firing their weapons at empty shadows. Others abandoned their posts and tried to flee. There was nowhere to run. On the second hunter ship, Kim So-yeon and Yoon Ji-hoon had adopted a different strategy. While Min-seo preferred silent assassination, So-yeon believed in creative destruction. She and Ji-hoon fought their way to the engineering section through a wall of Korath defenders. Unlike their sergeant, they did not hide. They attacked with overwhelming violence, cutting through the enemy like a blade through soft flesh. Their modified assault rifles fired rounds that exploded inside their targets, turning proud warriors into broken corpses. When they reached the reactor room, So-yeon immediately began working on the power systems. "What are you doing?" Ji-hoon asked while guarding the door. "Creating motivation," she replied. "In about 5 minutes, this reactor will begin an overload sequence. The crew will have 2 choices: evacuate to the escape pods or die in the explosion." "And when they evacuate?" So-yeon smiled beneath her helmet. "The escape pod bay is 3 corridors away. We will be waiting." The plan worked perfectly. When the reactor alarms began screaming, the surviving Korath abandoned all thoughts of fighting and ran for the escape pods. They poured into the corridors in desperate waves. So-yeon and Ji-hoon were ready. On the third ship, Lee Dong-wook and Sergeant Kang Ha-jun had discovered something unexpected: a cargo hold filled with cages. Inside those cages were captives aliens from a dozen different species who had been taken by the Korath for sale on the slave markets. "Command, we have found prisoners," Ha-jun reported. "Approximately 30 individuals, including—" He paused as his scanner identified 2 of the captives. "Including 2 Sundari children." Min-seo's voice came back immediately. "Secure the prisoners. Protect them at all costs. We are almost finished here." Ha-jun nodded to Dong-wook. "You heard her. Guard this room. Nobody gets in." Dong-wook took up position at the door with his weapon raised. "Let them come. I am ready." Back on the command ship, War Chief Krathvolum watched his tactical display with growing horror. His fleet was dying. His warriors were being slaughtered by unknown enemies. And he still had not even seen his attackers. He grabbed his personal weapon and prepared to fight. If death was coming for him, he would face it like a true Korath warrior. The bridge door exploded inward, and a small human female stepped through the smoke. Krathvolum finally saw his enemy, and in that moment, he understood why his warriors had died screaming. Those cold, dark eyes held no mercy at all. Queen Velithanara stood frozen before the main view screen, watching something that should have been impossible. Her communications officers had managed to intercept the Korath internal broadcasts, and now the entire bridge crew witnessed the destruction of 200 alien predators by 6 human soldiers. The footage was grainy and chaotic, filled with screaming and weapons fire and death. So much death. "By the stars," Commander Yethrol breathed. "They are actually doing it." The Queen could not respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the screens, showing different sections of the 3 enemy ships. She watched the Reaper called Min-seo move through corridors filled with Korath warriors and leave only corpses behind. She watched the one called So-yeon create an explosion that forced an entire ship to evacuate, only to cut down the fleeing enemy with terrible precision. She watched 6 humans do what her entire royal fleet could not. "The assault has lasted 37 minutes, one of her officers reported in a shaking voice. Enemy casualties appear to be approximately 170 confirmed kills. 170? Another officer repeated. That is not possible. That is almost 30 kills each. But the evidence was undeniable. The Korath apex predators, who had terrorized this sector for generations, were being systematically exterminated by a handful of humans who moved like shadows and struck like lightning. Then something changed on one of the screens. The footage showed the human called Hajun standing guard in what appeared to be a cargo hold. Behind him, the Queen could see cages, dozens of cages containing living beings. Her heart clenched when she recognized the species of some captives. "Those are slaves," she whispered. The Korath had already captured victims before they attacked us. Yathral enhanced the image and gasped. "My queen!" "Two of those captives. They are Sindari. They are children." Valathanara gripped the console so hard that the metal creaked beneath her fingers. Sindari children in Korath hands. The thought filled her with rage and despair. But as she watched, the human soldier broke open the cages one by one, freeing the prisoners and guiding them to safety. He was not just killing the enemy. He was saving the innocent. The Queen's understanding of these humans began to shift. She had expected mindless violence, the brutality that supposedly defined Deathworld species. Instead, she saw something far more complex. These Reapers killed with terrifying efficiency, yes, but they also protected. They also rescued. They balanced destruction with compassion in ways that confused and amazed her. On the command ship, the final confrontation was beginning. War Chief Krathvalum faced Minseo in the smoke-filled bridge, his massive form towering over the small human female. He activated his ceremonial blade, a weapon that had killed hundreds of enemies over his long career. "You think you can defeat me, tiny creature?" He roared. "I am Krathval. I have conquered worlds." Minseo said nothing. She simply raised her own blade and waited. The Korath chieftain attacked with all his strength and speed, bringing his weapon down in a strike that should have split the human in half. But Minseo was not there. She had moved faster than any creature had a right to move, and now stood behind him with her blade already wet with his blood. Krathvalum looked down at the wound in his side. It was not fatal, but it was deep. He spun around with another attack, and again Minseo dodged with impossible grace. Another wound appeared on his arm. "What are you?" he demanded. "You are not natural. No prey moves like this." "You made a mistake," Minseo replied in her cold, flat voice. "You attacked beings under our protection. You threatened to enslave a queen. You took children from their families." She paused and let her words sink in. "We do not forgive such things." The fight continued for another 2 minutes. By the end, Krathvalum was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his movements slow and clumsy with pain. He fell to his knees, his weapon clattering to the floor. "Kill me then," he growled. "Finish it." Minseo studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised everyone watching. She lowered her blade. "You will face a galactic tribunal for your crimes," she announced. "Your victims deserve justice, not just revenge. Surrender, and you will live to stand trial." Krathval's eyes widened with shock. Then his expression twisted with contempt. "Mercy? You offer mercy to a Korath? We do not accept such weakness." He lunged for a hidden weapon at his belt, a small plasma pistol designed for exactly this situation, but his hand never reached it. Minseo's blade moved once, and War Chief Krathvalum fell dead at her feet. "Mercy was offered," she said quietly. "He chose differently." Queen Valathanara watched the final moments of the battle with tears forming in her silver eyes. Not tears of fear or sadness, tears of something she had not expected to feel. Respect. Deep, profound respect for these terrifying, compassionate, contradictory humans. The communications console activated with an incoming transmission. Minzio's face appeared on the screen, blood splattered but calm. "Your space is clear," she reported. "All 3 enemy vessels are secured. We have 32 rescued captives, including 2 Sindari children. Requesting permission to dock and transfer survivors." The Queen found her voice. "Permission granted, Sergeant." And she paused, searching for adequate words. "Thank you. Thank you for everything." Mincio nodded once. "We were happy to assist." Reaper Squad returning now. As the connection ended, Commander Yethral turned to his queen with an expression of absolute wonder. 43 minutes, he said. They neutralized 3 warships and 200 warriors in 43 minutes. And they saved the slaves. They actually saved them. Valethanara nodded slowly. "I think we have misunderstood humans for a very long time, old friend. I think the entire galaxy has misunderstood them." She watched the small black ship detach from the Karth command vessel and begin its approach to the Eternal Grace. Inside that ship were 6 soldiers who had just accomplished the impossible, not for payment, not for glory, but simply because someone had asked for help. The Queen began composing a message in her mind, a message to the Sindari High Council that would change her people's relationship with humanity forever. It was time for new understanding. The Reapers returned to the Eternal Grace covered in the blood of their enemies. Queen Valethanara waited at the airlock with her surviving crew, watching as the 6 human soldiers walked back onto her ship. They moved slowly now, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of the rescued captives they supported. 32 beings from a dozen species stumbled through the airlock, some crying with relief, others too shocked to make any sound at all. And there, among the freed prisoners, were 2 small Sindari children. The little ones, a boy and a girl no older than 10 cycles, clung to the armored legs of Corporal Beak Tehan. Their blue skin was dirty and marked with bruises, but their silver eyes shone with something that made the Queen's heart ache. Trust. They looked at their human rescuer with absolute trust. "Your Majesty," Tehan reported, "these children were taken from a transport ship 3 days ago. They have been asking for their parents." Valethanara rushed forward and knelt before the children, her royal dignity forgotten. "You are safe now, little ones. We will find your family. I promise you." The little girl looked up at Taihan's blood-stained armor. "The scary humans saved us," she said in a small voice. "They were scary, but they were nice." The Queen felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She looked up at Taihan, at Mincio, at all 6 of these warriors who had just killed 200 enemies and then carried children to safety like the most gentle nursemaids. "How?" she asked. "How can you be both things? How can you be so deadly and so kind in the same moment?" Mincio removed her helmet and knelt beside the Queen. Up close, Valethanara could see the human's face more clearly, the small scars that spoke of many battles, the lines around her eyes that suggested both hardness and something deeper. "Your Majesty," Mincio said quietly, "may I speak with you privately?" The Queen nodded and led the Reaper Sergeant to a small observation room away from the crowd. Through the window, they could see the drifting wreckage of the Korath fleet ships that had threatened slavery and death just 1 hour ago. Now nothing but tombs floating in the void. "You want to know why we are this way," Mincio said. It was not a question. Yes, my people have studied humans for decades, but we never understood. You come from a death world filled with violence and danger. Your history is written in blood and war. And yet, the Queen gestured at the rescued captives visible through the door. You risk everything to save strangers. You offer mercy to enemies. You carry children like they are precious treasures. How do these things fit together? Mincio was silent for a long moment, her dark eyes fixed on the stars beyond the window. Our world tried to kill us, she finally said. Every day for millions of years, the Earth tried to destroy humanity. Predators hunted us. Diseases ravaged us. The weather itself seemed designed to end our existence. We should have died. Every logical calculation said we should have gone extinct. She turned to face the Queen. But we survived. Do you know how? Not because we were the strongest or the fastest or the most violent. We survived because we protected each other. When the world was cold, we shared our fire. When predators came, we stood together. When one of us was weak, the others carried them. Her voice grew harder. We learned that protecting the tribe, protecting the innocent, was the only way to endure. And that lesson became part of our very souls. It is why we created warriors like the Reapers. We are not killers because we love death. We are killers because when something threatens those under our protection, we will become monsters to keep them safe. Queen Velithanara listened with growing wonder. Everything she had been taught about humans, their violence, their unpredictability, their danger suddenly made a different kind of sense. You are not predators, she whispered. You are guardians who learn to become predators. Mincio nodded. That is why we answered your call, Your Majesty. You asked for help, and by that request, you placed yourself under our protection. The Korath made the mistake of threatening someone we had decided to protect. They were dead the moment they refused to leave. The Queen sat down heavily, her mind struggling to process this new understanding. For 50 years, her people had rejected human alliances because they feared humanity's violent nature. But they had misread everything. Humans were not dangerous because they were savage. They were dangerous because they cared. Their deadliness was not a threat to the innocent. It was a shield for the innocent. And any fool who threatened someone under human protection would learn just how sharp that shield could be. I would like to propose something, the Queen said slowly. A formal alliance between the Sindari Collective and the Terran Union. Full diplomatic relations, trade agreements, and mutual defense treaties. Mincio raised an eyebrow. That is a significant change from your government's previous position. My government did not spend 43 minutes watching 6 humans tear through 200 Korath to save our lives. The Queen stood and extended all 4 of her hands in the Sindari gesture of deepest respect. I will personally speak to the High Council. I will tell them what I witnessed today, and I will make them understand that humanity's friendship is the greatest security our people could ever have. Mincio accepted the gesture with a small bow. I hope they listen, Your Majesty. The galaxy has many threats. It would be good to face them together. An hour later, the Silent Judgment prepared to depart. Repairs were already underway on the Eternal Grace, and a Sindari rescue fleet was racing toward their position. The Reapers walked back to their ship in single file, their mission complete. But before they reached the airlock, the 2 rescued Sindari children broke free from their caretakers and ran toward them. Wait! The little girl shouted. Wait! Sergeant Mincio turned and knelt as the children reached her. The little girl threw her small arms around the human's armored neck. Thank you for saving us, scary nice lady, she said. Something changed in Mincio's voice, face something soft that had been hidden beneath all that deadly professionalism. She hugged the child back with surprising gentleness. You are very brave, she told the little ones. Remember that. No matter what happens, be brave and look after each other. The children nodded solemnly, then ran back to the Queen's waiting attendants. Mincio stood, replaced her helmet, and walked onto her ship without another word. Queen Velithanara watched the Silent Judgment detach and disappear into the darkness as silently as it had arrived. The most terrifying warriors in the galaxy, gone without fanfare or celebration. Your Majesty? Commander, Yethril asked. What are you thinking? The Queen smiled, something she had not done in a very long time. I am thinking that we have been fools, old friend. We spent 50 years fearing humanity when we should have been seeking their friendship. The galaxy is full of predators who see other species as prey. But humans, she shook her head in amazement. Humans see prey and want to protect it. They are Death World guardians, not Death World monsters. Across the galaxy, in a dark chamber on the Korath homeworld, a war council reviewed the footage from the failed slave raid. They watched in horrified silence as 6 humans dismantled their warriors with contemptuous ease. "This cannot be allowed to stand," the Supreme War Chief growled. "We will gather our fleets and what?" An elder interrupted. "Attack the humans?" After seeing this, they sent 6 soldiers against 201. 6. How many will they send if we threaten their territory? How many of these Reapers do they have? No one had an answer. The footage continued playing death after death after death, delivered by shadows with human faces. "Send word to all Korath vessels," the Supreme War Chief finally ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Human space is forbidden's territory. Any ship that crosses their borders does so without protection from the fleet." For the first time in Korath history, a species had earned their fear. And somewhere in the dark between stars, 6 warriors traveled home to rest until the next time the innocent cried out for protection. The Reapers would always answer.